Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the CRM MVP podcast. This time, episode number 95. I am super excited to have Joel on the show today. Joel, how are you?
Hey
Thank you for
guys,
joining.
good.
Uh, I'm super excited because I know you know everything there is to know about today's topic, and I know almost nothing there is to know about today's topic, other than the things that I've learned from press releases and the things that we hear as MVPs. But I haven't really played with it. And what we're talking about is Dataverse for Teams, also known as Project Oakdale, right? Which I thought it was a pretty cool name. They should have kept it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't want to get into product naming stuff.
Yeah, translating Oakdale. I have no idea how you say that in Spanish. So I assume it's the same as everything else, but I like the name. I like it was like when Resco came up with Woodford, it was like their code name for the project. And once they were done with the tool, they're like, we kind of like Woodford. Let's just keep that. They never came up with another name. I don't know if you know that story, but anyway. Yeah, so what I wanted to talk to you about is Dataverse for Teams because I had a call with a customer actually last week that they are online right now and they're paying for the full app, and they were thinking about making the move to Power Apps and saying, look, a lot of the stuff that we do is custom anyway, and the stuff that we're using from the Sales app is something that we can easily recreate or re-engineer. We don't really need to use it. So they don't have a lot of users. I think they have about 65, but they were like, we can save a ton of money by switching to the Power Apps and going into the per user per app model, which is $10 a month rather than the 100 and something we're paying right now. But while we were doing our research and learning about Power Apps and all of that, we came across this thing called Dataverse for Teams, where you pay zero pretty much because we already have Teams, and it looks like it will work for us. So they wanted to have a call. We talked for an hour, and obviously some of the limitations that we found with Project Oakdale or Dataverse for Teams, were kind of deal breakers for them. So they're still looking at switching to the Power Platform, but it's getting the attention, right? A lot of customers are reading this stuff and saying, "Oh, well, we have Teams. Why don't we do that?" And I wanted to bring you on the show so we can talk about it. So before we start talking about it, just remind people who you are, who you work for, and since how long have you been, I guess, working or learning about Dataverse for Teams?
So my background is I work for Hitachi Solutions North America. I lead the Power Platform practice there, and I have been my background with Dataverse for Teams is about 6, 7 months now. Basically, we have been working with Microsoft to produce the out of the box. You might call them the sample apps or the launch apps. There's three different apps in the Team store, with a fourth and fifth app going into public preview right around now for things like inspections and things like issue reporting and customer or employee ideas, the types of apps that are not necessarily dynamics scale apps, but still very important apps. You might, if you think of the different types of categories of apps, you have on the low end personal productivity, and on the high end you got enterprise apps like sales, customer service. These are the ones that are kind of in the middle. For example, a manufacturing company that wants to go do an inspection of their facilities or of their equipment, they could use this. And you can go to the Team store, and some people don't even know there is a Team store, but if you click those three dots on the left side and search for inspection or employee ideas, you can actually install those apps today. And Dataverse for Teams is a light version of Dataverse, which is the common data service for us old timers. And it basically creates a database per team. So if you think about it, uh, you have the option to get the benefits of a relational database included in your Teams license. And this is driven by a couple different factors. One is Teams is by far, hands down, the hottest uh, product that Microsoft has these days, driven by remote work and COVID. It has over 100 million daily active users. The
Wow.
other platform would kill to get that many monthly active users. That's the number of people using Teams every single day. And so it makes sense that Teams is being viewed as a bigger platform than just communication and collaboration. And it's a place, basically it's kind of like its own operating system where you can run applications, not just Power Platform, but you look at the Team Store, there's a number of different applications and you can build chat bots and Azure bots and other things like that and deploy them right in there. And so that's part of what's driving it, but also the reality that a lot of people are using SharePoint and Microsoft Lists for apps driven purely by licensing because there's no additional cost. So they're putting things in there that really shouldn't be in a Microsoft list because if you build an app on a Microsoft list or a SharePoint list and I share that app with you, I have to share the entire list with you too. So if you're storing sensitive data, think about it. You might obscure it in the app, but you're not really securing the data. And somebody could go in and read, even delete the data right from the SharePoint list. And so that's the benefit. But also think, let's just say some number. I don't know what it is, but probably 50% plus apps being built today are on SharePoint or Microsoft lists to upgrade those because a lot of apps have a grow up story. It started with two people, they had a bright idea or a problem they wanted to fix. And so they built this app on SharePoint, and suddenly everybody in the company wants to use it. It's viewed as the most important application in the company. Oh crud, now we got to rebuild the whole app if we want to scale it up to a more robust relational database, something with more security. And so the other factor is Dataverse for Teams serves as that kind of grow up story where you can start simple, start with a you know with something that's included in your licensing. And then if it reaches that point where you need business units or you need some of the other things that are not in Dataverse for Teams or more data, I mean, it's limited to 2 gigabytes and about a quarter of a gig is taken up by the core tables and everything. So with that in mind, you want to make sure you're using it for the right place, but it's a great fit for those kind of important apps that have the potential to grow into enterprise apps, but we're not there yet because it has a story where I can scale it. Also, you can go to make.powerapps.com and go to that environment and export your solutions out too. So the ALM story isn't quite there yet, but it's getting there. You can use Power Automate, a lot of great things. So that's really where Dataverse for Teams fits in.
Right. So I agree with you that it's not an either or situation like my customer was thinking about. Like we have to either pick Power Apps, like full Dataverse, or Dataverse for Teams or Dataverse Lite, however you want to call it. It doesn't have to be an either or. I think that some solutions, even if you're a Dataverse customer, some solutions might be easier to just put together on a team based environment rather than creating a whole app for it. Although if you're already paying for the full thing, maybe it makes sense to do a Canvas app or a model driven app on the regular Dataverse environment. But I think the attractive part of it is you can create these apps easily and you don't have to pay for the users that are leveraging the apps, right?
Yeah, I think a conversation about apps inside of Teams itself would be helpful here too, because setting aside whether you're using Dataverse for Teams or you're using full CDS or you're using SharePoint, any of those apps can also be displayed in Teams, and you can go to a team and add an app and choose the app from the list, and then they use it there. So the reason that apps plus Teams is really powerful, and we've had CRM audio episodes about this, but just in general, even before Dataverse for Teams was announced, the reason that's valuable is because if you're going to digitally transform a bunch of manual processes, say manufacturing companies are a great example because they've got these paper forms they use, safety forms, inspection forms, other things like that. You start replacing each of those with an app. Like people that come from InfoPath, they churned out a bunch of digital versions of paper forms basically built in Power Apps. You wind
Right.
up with hundreds and hundreds of apps. How do users find those things? They have no context. They have a big long list of apps they choose from. Whereas if they have a team for that context, say the safety group has a team already, what better place to put that form than in that team? So then to users, they don't think, oh, I'm going to go run my Power App now. No, I'm going to go to Teams and I'm going to, talk to my team here. And I'm also going to do the safety inspection. And so that's the story that is really catching on, and I think that's where, add to that, you have just much better context. And somebody disputed me on that and said, well, you still have sprawl, now you got a bunch of teams all over the place. That's true, but if you plan it out and you organize your content, I think of the old Trapper Keeper. When I was a kid, you had a Trapper Keeper where you had all your folders and you put them in one place. That's what Teams is to me. It's the place that adds context and organization to your disconnected digital life.
Makes sense. And you mentioned a couple minutes ago the limitation of the 2 gigs per, I guess, per database at that point. Um, what other limitations, do people, maybe people might be surprised with when or by when they're looking into Dataverse for Teams?
The most mind-blowing one for old-time Dynamics people like us, Gus, is no system entities. So literally, no account entity, no contact entity. You have the user entity, but it doesn't have all the fields. It just has the base fields for the persona. So that's the biggest thing, is if you're designing an app for this and you're coming from a CDS slash Dataverse background, you you by reflex will think, oh, that's a person, so therefore we're going to put that in the contact entity. That's a task, so we'll use the task entity. So if you're building an app, it really is that naked XRM database people have asked for, and like, hey, just give me the base database with no system entities, and I'll go to town. So you really can do that, but you need to think about that, in that if I'm going to scale the solution so that it goes for Dataverse for Teams, but also can grow up into full Dataverse, what are those points where when I get to full Dataverse, I'll want to update my solution so that it will use that. So that's one thing. It also doesn't have an exposed API to the level that Dataverse does. So some of the things that you might use, you might think plugins, web resource, all that stuff. None of that works with it. Duplicate detection rules. Now you can connect the XRM toolbox to it, just like an environment, and there a lot of those tools will work, but some of them that rely on the APIs will not work with it. So don't bank on your favorite tools or third party add-ons working with it. It really is the core database. Also, you need to understand the security model. It does have security, and it's built to leverage the owner member structure within Teams. They want to go a lot simpler, because the security within CDS is great when you need it, but for simple apps, it's overkill in a lot of cases, where if your app fits within the construct of a manager should see these things versus a member should see or be able to do these things, that'll work. If you get to where you need business units, and this group should see these records, this group should see these other records at the core platform level, then that's when you really should be using full Dataverse versus Dataverse for Teams.
Yeah, the security it's not very flexible, right? It's kind of like if you're the owner of the team, you have admin rights pretty much, and then everyone else has read and write. Like there's not a whole lot of, I guess, flexibility when it comes to setting that up. Like we have sharing and we have, assign powers and like all that stuff. You don't have that intricacy within Dataverse for Teams, correct?
Yeah, no, you don't. You really don't. And there's no model driven apps yet either. I could imagine they will be coming, but that's the other thing, is if you need something more than Canvas apps, you need that immersive experience for the administrator or whatever. That's the other thing. It's designed for Canvas apps, Power Automate. But one thing that a lot of people don't know is there's actually a light version of Power Virtual Agent. A lot of people loved PVA but stayed away from it because they would have to license. I believe it started $1,000, which was reasonable if you have a chatbot for customers and are doing a high volume chatbot. However, if you do a help desk type chatbot for internal purposes, and you just maybe, like in my company, I'll email my help desk twice a year maybe. So it wouldn't be the cost benefit ratio isn't there. But now for internal chatbots with pretty full functionality, you can do them within Teams, within that. And all that works within solutions and everything, and supports the ALM story too.
Can you create an app for Teams, so Dataverse for Teams, and then allow outsiders to interact with it?
Doesn't support guests yet, but one thing that you can do is it's designed within the Teams construct, but you can actually share a Teams app with your organization. And what that means is, say you have the Gus Gonzalez team, and you create an app and you build your app in there, but you want people who aren't in that team to be able to access the app from Teams. I can share that app so that they can then pin it to the side of Teams and run it. Even people that aren't members of the team.
Okay, so because you can invite people to your team that are outsiders, but they just won't be able to see the app, I guess?
Yeah, so right now external users don't work. Also, they currently don't work within private channels. So if you have a
Hmm,
team, there's a lot of the apps that don't work within private channels. Private channels are very limited. There's only a handful of apps that actually, not just Power Apps, but in general, the add-on connectors that work with private channels.
interesting. So what happens if you have an app for a team, and then you share with your whole company, like you mentioned, but then let's say 6 months later you decide you don't need the original team anymore because the app is available everywhere anyway, and delete the team. What happens then?
The database goes away. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
one thing. Again, it's people, when I talk to people, one of the concerns people have is, well, now we'll have everybody creating all these databases, and I say, so what? It's controlled. You're controlled by the amount of capacity. It doesn't cost you more for capacity. You're also controlled based on your standard, data DLP rules, and other things like that. And the connectors that you can use with the Dataverse environment are less. Now, this is one thing you can actually use the CDS connector, and so there are some benefits too. From, for example, if you use Dataverse for Teams, you can use the CDS connector for Power Automate and use that as part of your apps that you build there too. So there's benefits, but I view it as, it's, yes, it does open things up, and the naysayers might say, hey, we're just going to get returned to a bunch of access databases. But I would still maintain you can use the same enterprise tooling to control these environments. For example, you see them all listed in the Power Platform Admin Center. You can control the rules of what connectors can be used. You can basically prevent it so they can't connect to anything else. So really your only risk is the data that they choose to put in their own environment they could do something with, which is no different than if they build a spreadsheet. So again, it's giving users more options of things they can do, but still letting you as the administrator control it.
And there is a limit of how many apps you can create, right? Which is based on the number of teams. I think it's like 500 or something, right?
500 environments is the current limit. And
Right.
but within a team, you can have multiple apps, as long as you stay within the 2 gigabyte limit.
Okay. Um what else from the customization side, for those of us that are coming from the dynamic side, what can we do everything like in terms of customizations when it comes to, I guess, these are canvas, but are there any limitations of creating a canvas app for regular Dataverse versus Dataverse for Teams?
It's well, yeah. There's one key difference is you actually get some new controls when you do it through Dataverse for Teams. There's these new controls that are designed to look and feel like Teams, and so
Hmm.
the standard controls like the drop down date picker, other things like that in Canvas apps really haven't changed that much since 2016 or 2017 when they rolled it out. But the new controls look and feel like Teams, including supporting dark mode. Now, I believe that currently
Hmm.
may not be working right now for some of the controls, but the intention is uh, making the app building experience better and making it even a new someone new to the platform able to build an app that looks good, that is responsive. So that's where you've seen the acceleration, some of these things like the responsive containers, making Canvas apps responsive kind of by default, and make the new controls look very slick. Now, one thing to be aware of is some of the new controls have fewer configuration properties, like the radius on the button. You can't change it with the new one. But
Hmm,
I think the trade-off is it's going to make it easier for new people to the platform to take to building apps. I think there's a frustration for some users who go to an app and day, get really excited, and then leave and then build their first app and aren't blown away by the results. So if you go into Dataverse for Teams, if I was on a video, I would show you, but you basically go into the Team store, add the Power Apps app to it, and there's a build tab on there now, which then opens up the entire maker experience within Teams, and you choose which team you want to install your app to. When you do
nice.
that, it provisions the database. So it's not just going to go ahead and create a database for every team. It's going to
Right.
explicitly do it when you either install one of the sample apps or you go and create your first app.
Makes sense. Um, one of the things that I like about Canvas apps is the ability of leveraging the things that a phone is able to do. Because when I think of Canvas, I think about phone apps and tablet apps. I don't. I know you can run a Canvas app on a desktop, and I know they work. You can even embed them in model-driven apps. But I when I think of Canvas apps, I think about phones and tablets. And one of the things that I like about that is that you can leverage the things that you have on a phone that you don't have in a desktop, like the camera and the ability to drop in a map control and do navigation and stuff. How does that work with Teams?
Same thing. Basically, if you add a Canvas app to a team, it shows within a tab, just like if you have the files tab or you have the got the whatever the posts or the conversation tab,
Hmm.
or if you add one note to it, it's just another tab there with the name of the app on the top of the tab. And if you build them in a way that's responsive and also in a way that uses the new controls and styling components to set the light mode or dark mode, it's very seamless. I mean, the fonts look the same, the background colors, the dark mode looks the same. So but it also, here's the other thing, is it works on mobile and Teams. So they've updated the Teams mobile app.
Hmm.
So if I've got a Canvas app in my team and I go to that team in the Teams mobile app and go to that tab, it's as if I'm running it from the Power Apps app.
That's cool. Yeah, because that's what I was thinking is, when you're on the phone, you go to the Power Apps app to launch a Canvas app. But if this is running in Teams, do you run it from Canvas app or do you run it from the Teams app? So it sounds like the Teams app is the place where you run it. And I was wondering if those capabilities like cameras and maps and stuff would also work, even though you're running them from within the Teams app.
Yeah, there's not really any difference there. It's you're running behind the scenes, you're running Power Apps, but it's just displayed in the Team shell.
Do you have to have the Power Apps player installed to run the apps?
No, and that's
Huh,
the
that's
idea.
cool.
Is if you're using Dataverse for Teams, you're accessing those apps through Teams. You're not accessing them outside of Teams in the browser or in the Power Apps app.
That's cool. The other thing to think about, and while you were talking, I was pulling up some of the details about um, Dataverse for Teams, and I don't know how many of these have changed. I found an article from August, so obviously, as we know with Microsoft, a lot of things have changed, but I like it because they put it side by side, kind of a comparison on what's available in the database verse regular Dataverse and what's available in Dataverse for Teams. So it says, for example, the mobile offline is not possible with the Dataverse for Teams.
That's true, but the caveat to that is there is and the way that offline works with Canvas apps isn't like an offline sync like you might think of with model driven apps and dynamics. It's more of the app the formula is specifically saying save a local it's saving a local copy of the data
Hmm.
when you do it. And so uh, with that, it doesn't support full like offline like you would have with that, but it does support disconnection. So if
Hmm.
you build it with the same load data, save data formulas, what it'll do is if I leave the tab in the team and come back, I can have it resume. Now there are some limitations to that. On the phone, it works exactly like if you're using the offline capabilities or the offline formulas. In the browser, or actually it doesn't work in browser, but inside the desktop client for Teams, it works, but it's limited to a very small amount of data. It's not designed to take your whole database offline, but more give you the ability to pick up where you left off, which is really what, if you think about it, Teams itself doesn't work offline. So you're never going to use Teams offline, but you do frequently tab between things in Teams. So if you are designing that and you know that use case exists, use load data, save data to support disconnected scenarios. Just know that there's a pretty strong limit if they're in the desktop teams of how much data will be available when you do it, especially if you have things like pictures. Generally
Yeah.
speaking, if you just have text, that's not a lot. But if you have pictures, the disconnected capability inside the desktop version of Teams is very limited.
That's a really good point. Yeah, the Teams app, if you're not online, doesn't do anything. So, yeah, you wouldn't expect to use what's inside the team, like the app, if you're offline
But I
anyway.
can tell you it's extremely frustrating if you don't have this and you're using it and you just think it's in Teams and you think, "Oh, I'm gonna go over and check my message now and come back," and, "Oh, crap, my app started over."
Exactly, for sure. The other thing that the article says is that the common data model is coming soon, to Project Oakdale or Dataverse for Teams, which I think is cool because, Microsoft is part of that open data initiative or whatever. So it would be cool if you could start an app and say, drop the common data model entities in my app already because I'm going to follow that or whatever. Kind of like a template when you're creating the app. I don't know if that's out yet. Like I said, this is from August, but it just says coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a light version of that. Again, if you look at it, the common data model itself, if you set up a new CDS, a new Power Apps environment with common data model, it takes up at least a gigabyte of database. So that would be like half your storage would be gone. So unless they were to increase the storage, it would surprise me that if they would bring, the full uh,
Yeah,
common data model to Teams.
for sure. It says relevant search is not available, but I wasn't even thinking about that. Paginated reports or SSRS reports not available, which I'm cool with. And then it says for pro dev API access, which you already talked about, and plugins. Plugins is also not possible with Dataverse for Teams.
Right. Somebody did correct me on one thing. I said that Power BI wasn't available, meaning the normal way you would connect Power BI, but they actually said using the tools in the XRM toolbox and using a OData, they were able to connect Power BI to it as well, which is a good thing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And the other thing is, I read here that it talks about, and I've read this before. It talks about one environment per team, so one team can create only one Dataverse for that team environment. How does that relate to apps they can have and all of that?
Yeah, it's one database per team. So you could have put 5 apps inside one team. You just got to consider, how much data is going to be consumed by it.
Right, because you only have 2 gigs, as you mentioned before, or 1 million rows of data, which is a lot. I mean, I think for a lot of companies, 1 million rows or 1 million records, it's a lot. But I realize for really large companies that might not be enough. But you just pay $10 and go full Dataverse, I guess.
Right. And I was doing some benchmarking for some of our sample apps and how people would actually use them. And what I came across was the typical photo, if you use iOS or Android and take a picture with a modern smartphone, those can be up to a gigabyte or more. And so I mean, not a gigabyte, uh, it could be several megabytes anyway.
Yeah,
So what I found is if you're doing an app that's just storing text, you can get several thousands of records. If they're very small, you can maybe get up to, a couple 100,000 records. You start adding pictures in the mix, that storage gets eaten up a lot faster. Like if you've got like 3 photo fields on there or something per record, and you got people out there taking inspection pictures, you're probably within, the hundreds of records then.
yeah, and you were right. I think it says in terms of pictures, it's about 3 megs per picture, depending on the phone that you have.
It depends. It depends on how you put pictures in your Canvas apps because
Mhm.
there's a couple different ways to do them, and some of them actually downscale the image. But I found the average was probably around 700 to 800 KB.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
but even that, I mean, if you do 3 pictures per record, you're gonna eat up your 2 gigs of storage pretty fast.
Yeah, that's for sure. Um, let's see what else. It says right here that you can only have one business unit, which is great. I'm a big fan of that. Um, this says no auditing capabilities, no customer managed keys, no field level security or hierarchical security,
Right.
and no sharing. Hierarchical security. It really sounds to me like the out of the box security that you get with Teams. Like if you're the team owner, you're pretty much like a system admin, and if you are a team member, then you're a team member, right? I mean, it sounds like based on a hierarchy, based on a role within that team.
Kind of, but it's just two levels basically, level 1, level 2. And that's
Yes,
you know, I kinda cringed when I heard that at first, but, the minute you add any of that stuff, it gets more complex and it gets harder to get started than something like a SharePoint list. And
right,
the other thing I would encourage everybody to look at is go add the Power Apps app to Team, go to the Build tab, but then add a table, add an entity, and look at the experience there. They have an editable grid experience where I can see the data and add new columns to it and choose the type. And there are certain types of data too that we don't have in Dataverse for Teams. I don't have the full list. The main ones are there, but you're going to find some. Uh, you know, I even think multi-select option sets are there. I would have to double check that, but there are a few.
you
The
probably
you
you
get
probably
down,
don't have the
you're not going
customer
to
field.
you're not going to have a float field, for example.
Yeah,
Which they
or a customer
or
field, which is an
even
account or
I don't even know if currency is there because you don't have
mm,
price lists, you don't have all that stuff. But if you think about it, even the minute you add that stuff, it gets more complex. And so this is a great way to take what is good about SharePoint lists, which is it's very fast to set them up, very easy to work with them. You see the data as you're creating the list, but have the benefits of a relational database. So when people have complained about it who are CDS users or Dynamics users, I tell them this isn't really for you primarily. This is for the hundreds of millions of people who don't use Dynamics, who don't use CDS, and bringing them into the platform. And by making it more accessible to them, I think we all win. And I hope some of these concepts, like the editable grid, bleed over into full CDS because I think it's a real pleasure to use that to set it up. If you don't need the more advanced stuff, it's so fast and so nice to see the data as you're setting it up that I wish I could use that when I do a full CDS. Just
right.
because if I just need to create a bunch of text fields, lookups, etc., it's just much faster.
For sure. Wrapping up the things that you might be missing on Dataverse for Teams are export to the data lake, I guess. Data export service, which is huge for some organizations out there. You can post events to the event hub or events to the service bus, webhooks, server side sync, and the SQL Server Management Studio access, which you get if you're using data export service. But I mean, I think that I've been conditioned over the years by Microsoft to look for a gotcha, to look for like, okay, so what am I missing? I feel like, because I feel like when they, for example, introduced Team Member, they were like, well, no, Team Member is super cheap, like $3 per user. But you can really see, the out of the box entities, or if it's custom entities, you can only do 15, which are eaten up super fast by some of the solutions you have. And there's always like something that is missing. So when I heard that they were giving out this Dataverse Lite to anyone pretty much that has a license for Teams, I was sort of like, okay, but what am I missing? Like, are they only going to be able to, see half their data? Like, where is the gotcha? And yes, there are things that are missing, but some of these things are big things. I don't think that you need them necessarily for simple apps like the one that you talked about before.
Yeah, I think it's just making sure you understand those limitations. There's always limitations with everything in life, and you just need to understand the limitations and make sure you're using the right tool for the job. I mean, for if you're a Dynamics customer that already has a bunch of CDS environments, it's free capacity. Why not use it? Why does everything have to be in one big environment? If there's no connection or there's no direct relationship in the data, use this, build apps, and even though there's no data export service, there is Power Automate. I've built Power Automate flow that would take all the, say inspection records and move it to another place of, where you could
Right.
report on, or even bring this, you can't really bring data from here into a full CDS environment, but you could bring it into a reporting environment or something like that. So yeah, I think the limitations are pretty well known, and I think we're continuing to discover other things that you really can do with it, such as using Power Automate, using Power BI, but just make sure that you're using the right tool for the job. If you're somebody who's only used SharePoint, you have people that use Teams, I would definitely look at this as either to move some of your existing apps or consider apps that you build in the future, building them on here. And then if you already use CDS, just make sure you understand that. And also, this is a great way to have people start learning the platform. You have them do this. It's a controlled environment. They can have basically the full platform with Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent. They can use this as their playground as they build stuff that's cool. They can add other people to their team or move this app to another team. Yeah, so I think it's a win-win. It gets Microsoft more monthly active users of Power Apps, and it gets Microsoft's customers a great way to be able to build apps that are important but not enterprise grade, and something that's more scalable than using SharePoint lists.
Yeah, for sure. From the environment administration perspective, like, is there anything that we're missing? Like, for example, in terms of being able to create my own backups, restores, copy from one environment to another, things like that. What's available?
I would say the biggest thing on my list is the ALM story, and that is something that's in flux. I can't talk about specifics, but right now, again, you can. Here's a little trick for those of you who want to do this today. You can actually go to first of all go to PPAC, the Power Platform Admin Center, aka.ms/PPAC, and from the list of environments, you will see every team that has a Dataverse. You'll see an actual environment in the environment list. Click on that and you'll see the environment ID. Okay, just copy that. Then if you go to make.powerapps.com, it'll probably go to the default environment or something like that. You can change the ID of the environment in that URL to the ID of your Dataverse for Teams environment. Then you'll have the full maker experience there. And you can actually go to the solutions there and see the solutions that are installed. You can import solutions and you can also export solutions from there. And so you can right now start to use it. Now, it doesn't work with Deployment Manager and some of the more enterprise grade build tools and other things like that. That's where I think that story is coming. The other thing is the ISV story isn't quite there yet because there's no way for me to do it. But just like we have our apps in the app store that we built for Microsoft, don't be surprised before long you'll have ISVs able to sell their apps through there. And that's when I think this becomes a real ecosystem, because if you could use the Power Platform, either chatbots or Power Apps, and could sell them in the team store, that'd be pretty awesome.
That is awesome. And I think, the ability to implement solutions at the team level for us as partners is also beneficial, because the less money our customers have to spend in licensing, the more they can spend in consulting and making improvements and creating apps. So I'm pretty excited about it. I have to play more with it. I think that from the last projects I've done, there's always something that is needed that I wouldn't be able to do with a Dataverse for Teams app, and that's why I've stayed away from it. But I need to challenge myself to go learn it, because I do think that it can be an answer for a lot of customers, and maybe not for the whole implementation and the whole CRM solution, but some applications for sure. And the reason why I ask you about copying from one environment to another is because it happens a lot where you have a team that you create an app for, like their southeast or southeastern region, and then the west, or whatever, some other region is like, oh, we want the same app, but we have our own team. Like, can you just copy it? Can I just have it?
Yeah,
Uh,
you can go to the Power Apps app inside of Teams, go and pull up one team and see the apps are installed, and then say, "I want to publish this app to this other team" from there.
that's awesome.
So
Now,
that's
will they
how you
will they
can
get
handle
to see?
the dev. You have a dev team and a production team too, if you want.
But will they get to see the app from, because it feels like I'm sharing the app, meaning like when they log in, they won't see their data. They will see the data from the other team. So
There's two contexts. I could share
okay,
an app with the organization, allowing anybody in the organization to pin it to their Teams menu and use it using the database in my team, or I can actually publish an app to another team, which would then create a new Dataverse environment, move the solution, if you will, and then let them have their own copy of it.
okay. That makes sense. Yeah, because that's what I want to do. I want to copy it. So if I delete the original team where I copy it from, I don't lose this other team's app, or whatever.
Right.
So I have full copies. All right. Anything else that you want to add? I know that you mentioned, you told people to go and check it out and play with it and create some entities. But anything else? Any final thoughts about where this is going, and where Microsoft saw an opportunity to give people access to all these tools without really having to pay? Do you think that maybe it even increases the people that are switching from other systems in this pandemic to Microsoft Teams? Perhaps are using, I don't know, something else, and they're like, we can also create apps with Teams. Maybe we should go there.
Yeah, I think really this is bringing together a number of things. You look at the recent bid for Zoom, for example, the fact that which I laughed when I heard that, because I'm sure you remember when Salesforce introduced Chatter and we had nothing for like collaboration or conversation threading, and but
Exactly.
when are we going to get this cool stuff? Now it's like Microsoft is so far ahead and so many more users that everybody else is playing catch up. So that's where I think it's just this is the convergence of a number of things, from Power Platform, Teams, but also other technologies coming together. Teams is the hot property, so definitely I think that that's all coming together for this. So I think it's going to lead to some really exciting things.
That's awesome. Joel, if anyone has any more questions for you or any comments, what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Just my name. I don't have any fancy nicknames or anything like that. Just Joel Lindstrom.
Ninja.
That's already
Well,
taken.
yeah, that's already taken. You can't
All the
even,
good
yeah,
ones are taken. Like
I know.
Ninja,
All
yeah,
the cool ones.
all that stuff.
And then also you're the host of the CRM audio podcast, which a lot of our listeners know about, but they don't listen. They're loyal. They only listen to this show. No, I'm kidding. They all listen to CRM audio. So go and check it out, because you guys have done several episodes, I think, at this point about
Yeah, we
Project
we
OTED,
did.
right?
We did, yeah, and, we also also still involved in CRM tip of the day.
Oh
We didn't change the URL, but we changed the header to say Power Platform and Dynamics 365 tip of the day.
yeah. I'm kind of holding the fort for CRM MVP. That's gonna be forever. I don't
Yeah,
care
we'll
what
come
name they
back
choose.
someday. You stay there, you stay long enough,
You
someday
know,
it's
I,
gonna be
I it will come around. Yeah, it will come around. I was surprised that Dataverse stuck. Like, how is no one else using that name? Because first it was like Dataflex, and they had to change it. I was blown away that Dataverse was not taken already.
well, it's already been used, but they maybe had some agreements with the people that had it. I don't know.
I don't know, but I just feel like they keep doing this with SkyDrive and OneDrive. Like they just keep on coming up with great ideas, but not checking that there's something out there already for it. So hopefully this one sticks. Although CDS only lasted, like a year or something.
Yeah, I still think Common Data Service was a nice name, but it still sounded more like a definition than an actual name. Like,
Yeah.
it'd be the definition of something. That's the Common Data Service.
Well, and like people use common data service and common data model interchangeably, like they were the same thing, and you had to kind of explain that now common data model is this thing that Common Data Services, Microsoft version of Common Data. So I think now it will be easier to explain the Common Data model with Dataverse because they're separate. That you can't really exchange them the way you used to do it before.
Right.
Anyway, all right. So thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of the show. Don't forget, if you want to reach us out or if you have a message for me or Joel or whoever, info@crmmvppodcast.com. All of our episodes are hosted at crmmvppodcast.com, and they're actually now posting to our YouTube channel as well. Although I don't know how many people are listening to podcasts on YouTube. It's kind of just posting automatically, but they all have views, like a couple dozen views and whatnot. I'm not in it. It's not a video thing. It's only audio. So I appreciate whoever's tuning in and listening to that. But, check us out also, our 2 Minute Tuesday series. We're on episode 150 or something like that. 150 weeks in a row that we've posted that. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.